Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. Today we're looking at the Panerai Luminor Chronograph PAM 121 40mm in titanium. This is a special combination of two all-time greats. The Panerai Luminor heritage-inspired combat dive watch case and dial with the Zenith El Primero integrated automatic high-beat chronograph movement. A combination of two all-time greats unified in an unusual variation of the Luminor that's a little bit more individualistic than your average Panerai Luminor. And if you've ever heard the expression Panerai Luminors, Panerai Radiomers, seen one, seen them all, this PAM 121 is definitely the exception to the rule. So let's put it on my wrist, which is 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, and get a sense of the fit and the feel of the watch. Now at 40mm in titanium, this is a little bit more compact than your average 44mm Panerai Luminor or even 47mm Luminor 1950. And with the titanium case, it's also quite light. Now the strap is a supple calfskin unit, and the watch features an exceptional, that is unusual for Panerai, double deployant clasp. Most Panerai watches in the historic model use a pin buckle rather than a deployant. So this is a nice refinement, and it's an upscale refinement because this type of clasp costs more, it's more complex to assemble, and with full polish it contrasts nicely with the brushed flanks and brushed tops of this titanium case. Now the watch feels nice and wieldy on the wrist. It's really, as a cushion case in 40mm, it's an ergonomic dream come true. At 44mm, I can get along with a standard Luminor case, but for me the 40mm feels just right. It's the sweet spot. And because 40mm is a fairly standard traditional sports watch size, it matches well against the Omega Seamaster 300-meter Professional, the Bond Seamaster. It matches up well against the 40mm Super Case, Rolex GMT Master 2s, the Sea Dweller 40, the Submariner, but this watch gives you a lot more. It's far less common, being one of only 1,500 made for this particular model year, and having a short production run in terms of model years. The PAM 121 is definitely off the beaten path, not something you're likely to see at your next watch club get-together or office party. Now the look of the watch is classic Panerai Luminor. That is to say, relatively squat aspect ratio, straight lugs, 1-to-1, width to height, it's almost exactly the same. And that famed device protecting the crown, which was originally developed to reduce the wear and tear on crown seals, it eliminates the need to screw the crown in and screw the crown out to change the time or wind the watch. An innovation developed during the late 40s and patented during the 1950s by Panerai. It's completely original and aesthetically distinctive, and very butch, I may add, take on a locking crown, and to this day it remains just that much more practical for those who are operating a watch, perhaps with sweaty hands, wet hands, or gloved hands. Makes the crown that much more accessible. Plus, the benefit of this crescent-shaped crown guard is that it will deflect blows away from the crown and chronograph pushers. And that's a key part of the aesthetic of this watch, because it takes that classic Luminor look. It reads as a Luminor from across the room, and it doesn't read as a 40. It reads as a Luminor. The proportions are the key to that. But it takes that classic look and it integrates the chronograph pushers quite seamlessly, to the point where you really wouldn't see that the chronograph pushers are extending out from the crown guard unless you do a double take. So in profile, it doesn't look like a chronograph. Again, it reads as a Panerai Luminor. But the nice thing about this watch is that you do get that additional complexity. You get the chronograph, which is the traditional El Primero column wheel system, very crisp, a tactile pleasure with a nice audible click when you start it, stop it, and reset it. But you also get a dial, again, that reads as a Luminor, but offers a few refinements. Now I'm going to combine the dial and the bezel to discuss how this watch is just a bit sportier than your average Luminor. Now a standard Luminor is going to include typically Roman numerals at 12, 3, 6, and 9, possibly swapping in a date at 3 or a small second subdial at 9 in some cases. But this one includes full Arabic numeral calibration, a sporty treatment in its own right, with a tri-compax chronograph arrangement characteristic of the El Primero movement within, and then it pairs it with a polished tachometer scale, much like the Rolex Daytona or the Omega Speedmaster Professional, that can be used to time objects over a 1 kilometer course and instantly read their speed off the bezel. The combination of the brushed case and the polished tack is dramatic. Great contrast there. Likewise, the contrast of the brushed case, chronograph pushers, and even locking lever with the polished crescent guard makes the crown guard even more dramatic than it normally is, and it's quite a dramatic and salient feature of a standard Luminor. So Panerai works to good effect to set this one apart from the Luminor pack. Now, the anthracite color of the dial is non-standard for Panerai. Typically, it's matte black, period. But here, there's a beautiful anthracite. There's a gorgeous white graphic that is small seconds calibration, the 60-second track around the outer circumference of the hour track. There's the white printing of the small Arabic numerals, white printing of Luminor, Panerai, and automatic chrono, contrasting with the key lime of the indices at 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the numerals at 12 and 6, as well as the guilloche silver subdials. This is an animated, active dial with a lot going on. It's not afraid to stand apart. It's not afraid to play the role of sports watch just as much as it references its dive watch, combat watch heritage. And on the case back, you've got a view that's no less dynamic. This is technically known as the Panerai OP9 caliber, but what it really is, to everyone, is the El Primero. The watch that goes by that one name, the first integrated automatic high-beat chronograph launched in 1969 and saved from the scrapper's torch by an enterprising and slightly uncooperative watchmaker at Zenith in 1975. It's got a great backstory. It's beloved of enthusiasts. When you hold it up to your ear, it's got a rapid staccato beat to it that sounds like a sewing machine convention. But the bottom line is it's also a beautiful sight to behold. It has unique treatment in as much as all of the blued screws, the heat blued screws, are functional parts of the movement. Now, in most movements, they just hold stuff together, undifferentiated. But here, they're actually a combination of polished screws and blued screws, with the blued screws in the El Primero cueing the watchmaker as to which screws are involved in the regulation of the watch itself. So that's one of the distinctive treatments at play here. Another is the use of perlage on both base plate and bridges. Normally, it's some variation of perlage on the plate and Côte de Genève or straight graining on the bridges. Here, you have a Panerai customized winding rotor with the name of the company engraved, and you have perlage on the bridges and the base plate. A different way of doing it, but characteristic of how Zenith finishes its watches. There's also gorgeous straight graining on the levers, as well as radial graining on the wheels. There's a lot going on here. It's beautifully finished. It's definitely finished, I would say, a couple of rungs above the caliber found on standard Panerai Unitas and Valjoux 7750 powered watches. Because these movements are finished by Zenith, not Panerai, you get something that's distinctive and something that's a little bit more upscale, and that's before we even get to the movement itself. It is a COSC rated Swiss chronometer, so it meets chronometer specs, and that's a rarity because most Zenith El Primeros, including those made by the company today, Zenith itself, are not chronometer certified, and the chronometer certified Zenith movements in the old Rolex Daytonas are detuned to 28,800 beats per hour, not the 36,000 of the original. So if you want the full bore Zenith El Primero operating at 5 hertz, you want chronometer certification, you're probably going to have to go out and find a PAM 121 or PAM 122, because in general, that's where you're going to find the COSC certified El Primeros. And with a 52-hour power reserve, with a column wheel for crisp actuation, as we discussed earlier, that tactile pleasure of starting, stopping, and resetting your watch, a great story behind it, a tough-as-nails reputation, every inch the equal of the burly exterior of the Panerai Luminor. This is a fantastic combination of great movement, a great basic Panerai Luminor watch, and a unique treatment thereof. This is an outstanding watch for a Paneristi who wants something a little bit off the beaten path, or the sports watch enthusiast who can't quite get used to Panerai, can't quite warm up to the brand because he thinks they have perhaps a generic look. The bottom line is, in terms of horology, movement pedigree, you can't get any better. In terms of look, this one's as dynamic and individualistic as they come. This watch is in outstanding condition, and on top of everything else, it's water resistant to 200 meters. This is one of those only watch candidates. If you could only have one watch, this would be an outstanding choice. Check out this Panerai Luminor Chronograph PAM 121, 40 millimeters in titanium, on our website, Watch You Want.